It is 3 minutes away from 11 o'clock. You're inside Brunch on 107.7. My name is Rennie Bishop. It is great to have you here with us this morning. Dr. Terence Farrell laid a foundation of the Caribbean Court of Justice and a number of issues where his expertise take him, and we had the advantage of that. We are equally fortunate to have with us a gentleman who is learned in a number of ways, but specifically in the area we are talking about. He is Vaughn Rondon, and we are discussing procurement legislation. Dr. Farrell covered a lot of areas, but procurement is at the bottom of a lot of this as far as when we talk about squandermania and how our money is spent. Vaughn Rondon is a leading professional within the field of procurement and supply chain management. He has attained over 15 years of experience and is currently a sourcing manager. He's also with a state enterprise. He's there in that area. Vaughn, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
You were here early, and thank you so much for being patient as we go through this. Procurement legislation, when we talk about it, you and I briefly looked at that, and as you have done all your life, and realized that this is something that's very difficult for folks to grasp most of the time. You have a wealth of experience establishing procurement systems and procedures. Your forte is public service procurement, and where you see there is something wanting you moving, and you correct it. So this is one of the areas we would want to hear. For folks to understand procurement legislation, it started with the Central Tenders Board back in, 1961? Took us all the way up to when we got some changes. A number of changes took place between 79, 87, 93, brought us into the NIBDEC era, where the Central Tenders Board was not the only body looking after the public purse, as it were, and awarding contracts. NIBDEC stepped in there. Make clear to our listeners, what was the CTB, or Central Tenders Board, and what is this new legislation that was passed January 14th, 2015, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act 2015. Make clear to our listeners, and as you said, we're not going to boggle them with too many things, but make clear what was the Central Tenders Board and what is this new legislation and how they differ.
Right. So basically, well, first of all, morning to citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. First of all, the Central Tenders Board being the central point for the government procurement activities. It's a 50-something-year-old body, and you find that what we're looking at now is to change. So is a move to devolve that central authority by the creation of the NIBDECs, even the special purpose companies. My thing about it is in its essence, the Central Tenders Board was a beautiful ordinance. However, the lack of planning on the parts of the ministries force the Central Tenders Board to become, this archaic structure. So we're moving now to create a system, and we have not changed that level of culture. So we're going to have the evolved central authority, but we don't have a culture of planning in our country. We do have a culture of savings. We do have a culture of maintenance. So we're bringing a new act to put on a gash, and we haven't, looked at treating some of the root causes. So even with this act that we're going to implement, there are going to be some critical issues.
I'm glad that you said that. What is the transparency? Transparency in the award of government contracts remain contentious throughout the world. Trinidad and Tobago is not the only one. However, when you look at what's happening around the world, and you look at Trinidad and Tobago, we rank lowest in the key areas of favoritism in decisions of government officials. We ranked 137 as against 140 out of 140. Public trust in politicians, 128 out of 140. Diversion of public funds, 124 out of 140. And wastefulness of public funds, 112 of 140. So we have a serious problem here, and we are hoping that this, in fact, would go a long way to controlling it and getting the public back confidence, having confidence in the way in which their money is spent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you highlighted one stakeholder there, the minister. Yeah. But we have clear example that the minister cannot award any contract.
That's right.
The minister will not sign any documentation. So the public sector and the public professionals, they are the people. So we are throwing our hands up in the air and saying, bring us a law that is going to hold the ministers and the officials accountable. But yet still we have the public professionals not doing their job.
And you speak specifically, if I'm clear, that permanent secretaries is what you
Well, I mean, for the permanent sec, come all the way down.
Okay.
Because what's going to happen is it takes about at least 3 to 5 public sector individuals to be involved in a process for this corruption or this so-called wastage to happen. Yeah. So I'm thinking we're looking at holding the ministers accountable, but until we see some public servants being arrested and going to jail for failure to follow a particular process, then, because most the minister could say to you, I instruct, get it done. A minister will never say to you, breach a process. You take it upon yourself. You so love the minister, you want to please him.
You're saying there is wanton breach of the process now.
Of processes, yeah, definitely. So at the end of the day, we have a legislation that we want to put in place that has a lot of hefty fines and a lot of jail time behind it. But guess what? Me as the procurement professional, I'm the one that's going to be going to jail. And I mean, I've looked at the sizes of some of the cells, I can't fit in it, Yes. And then when I'm starting, because I'm in the public sector right now, and when you start to call process and when you start to say this is wrong, you're being accused of all kind of affiliations. I mean, I've been called many things under the sun just for saying this is a breach in the process. And what we need to focus on in the process, no law that you can put in place is going to change what the culture or the processes.
What investigative bodies we have to follow through on this? Let us say, you are stating, it is your business, that you have a lot of regulations being breached by public servants to please their minister in some case, or whatever is their motivation. What investigative bodies we have in there? Professor Farrell mentioned a couple of them a while ago. He mentioned a deficiency in the police, but is this the direction we're going into?
Well, with this new act is going to establish something called a regulatory body, and the regulator is going to be that person, the so-called procurement police, where the public can now raise issues or concerns, or even procurement professionals or even within the organization can now reach to the procurement regulator for some sort of justice, and then he will now have the powers to refer any matter to the DPP, even the Integrity Commission. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to have someone that is going to be responsible and accountable for investigating any instances of impropriety within public spend.
I made a mention a moment ago, we're discussing, listeners, in case you just tuned in with us, Vaughn Rondon is my guest. We're talking procurement, and we're talking about what we can do to tighten the process or have people stay within their lane, to quote a recently minted way of saying it. Folks to stay within their lane, stay within the confines of the law to do their business. We are talking about ways to do that. The question of permanent secretaries and how much they are allowed to they can but they can do it multiple times. So if I think it's $1 million. Is it $1 million or is it $2 million?
$5 million, I think.
All right. Yeah. But they can do that a number of times.
Right.
All right. Now, you were saying while the problem exists lower down the line, from the PS level, is that not where a lot of the money goes out? I mean, they're supposed to be the guardians of the public.
Well, the thing about it is this. We go back to budgets, right? You send forward a budget, and you have in that budget, you have a project, and it was approved. To me, no matter how much money you have within your delegated financial authority, it must be aligned to a project. So I can't wake up in the morning before I have my breakfast and I say, you know what, I want to create a project. It can't happen like that. The problem we have is that you might have a minister or a CEO or somebody coming up with a project overnight, and it becomes part of the public spend in the morning. So we just had a budget, $63 billion, And we're saying now you have an opportunity to come to the midterm review and ask for more. How is that possible? If you said to me that I have a project spanning 1 year and this is what it's going to take, why am I coming back to you at the midterm review for more money? So it means that I either under budgeted, I either did not plan properly, or we have now encountered, we have this thing called emergencies. And for me, I always give the example to some of my students. We know Independence Day is the 31st of August every day, every year since 1962. Yet many ministries will wait until the week before Independence to now order flags and buntings and all this stuff. Obviously, it's going to be a
3
cost.
times, yes.
Yeah? Every year we go through the same thing. I'm saying to you, we have to reach into a culture now where we plan properly and we now look to savings. So the midterm review is only going to be for emergencies. So we say, listen, we did not factor in the price of oil dropping to this low level. So the midterm review comes now, what projects can we now drop? What projects can we focus on? Every midterm review we go to, we look for more money.
Over recent years, what we've seen, Vaughn, in Trinidad and Tobago, the proliferation of entities that, though funded by government, consider that they should be outside the scope of government procurement rules. How does the new system ensure that entities which receive public money, like state enterprises, develop and implement systems that are fully in keeping with the national procurement guidelines? How do we do that?
Part of the legislation, there is a definition for public money, and it goes as a received or receivable by a public body, raised by an instrument from which it can be reasonably inferred that the state accepts ultimate liability in the case of default, spent or committed for future expenditure by a public body, distributed to a person appropriated by Parliament. This now encapsulates everything that, once you have a definition of public body, it's interesting because now most of these sponsorship and these giving money to public entities or to community groups or this kind of thing now fall under the purview is considered public money. And I think it is an amazing definition because it now, raises some sorts of questions.
It is a real definition.
And we're saying now is that, are we prepared for that definition? I mean, one company that comes to mind, you have the National Lotteries Control Board, and they have become a de facto FET promoter because every 1 or 2 FET you'll hear, you see some sort of sponsorship. Now, under this definition of public money, we just can't be giving private entities money in the name of sponsorship without the accountability. So the act in this case now, bringing for the first time a definition on public body is going to now be a game changer. And the thing about it is, it has been proclaimed. We are hearing that, there are some toss-ups as to whether we will have full proclamation and whether we'll have changes. But it'll be interesting to see if we're now going to try to dumb down this public money or the public body definition. It sends a clear message that we're not serious about procurement.
I want to go back just a little bit. We're dealing with what obtains here. I just want to go with what some folks may say, guys, you should have started with where the real problem starts. Some folks may opine, which is to say the bidding process. Many say the bidding process is rigged. They say that, favoritism, kickbacks, all these things are involved in the bidding process. Speak to how this law deals with that.
Well, there are, some fines for bid rigging, but I'll throw it back there. I mean, we're looking at the bidding process, and it starts before. So when someone creates a scope, and the scope is designed to a particular vendor, no matter what process you go through, that vendor is going to be selected.
That's right.
So, I mean, we're looking at the bidding process and the people involved, but guess what? It goes back to a product that has been created. Now, is this project that has been created and the scope has been designed needed for the entity? That's where we need to start. So in the bidding process, you can have people just submit a document and walk away from it, and they are selected. So it starts even from the project creation stage. Now, many times we have this scope. We're not confident in the scope. Somebody wins because right now in our country, lowest price wins. If you come $1 less, you're actually going to get the job. We need to look at value. We need to have a situation where when we do an evaluation, we have a number of options. So how I like to put it is, this person may be the cheapest, But then there's
what
somebody
kind of work
now.
you're getting?
There's somebody else now who's bringing better quality or is giving us a maintenance package. So we need to list from an evaluation standpoint, or these are the options. And we need to look at best value as opposed to the lowest price.
The Public Procurement and Disposal of Property Act to 2015, it covers this?
Well, it talks about bid rigging. It's clear there's some charges on it. Again, I think to prove that you have had some level of bid rigging, what you need is to have some person who has been on that team who has been approached and is willing to come forward now and say, well, Mr. So-and-so approached me and asked me to influence the process. Now, this is something we need to be careful of, because in this space where we have 1.3 million people, the word gets out. I always give an example. I was going to my car and I was met by a contractor who said, we here use the man who blocking contract. And, I was like, when I explained the process, it had nothing to do with me. But they have gone to the political individuals and they were promised. And from the get-go, that is a breach in the process. And as long as we have now political parties or political individuals creating a need for a project, that's where the project should come from the operational people. This makes sense. Right, so if you're in a particular enterprise or particular ministry, we are doing the following because it makes sense. It's part of our strategic plan. So whether a minister comes or go, we continue work as normal.
Am I correct to say then that there is a lot going to be at the door of the procurement regulator?
Yes.
Because he used to look at what's going on, identify the things you are saying now, report to Parliament every year with a report as to what is working, what is not working, and what we can do to correct it. In addition to, he will have, I assume, the Commission will have the power to commission of inquiries and follow through and stuff
and
like
actually
that.
Go into a process and stop. Now,
expand on that for me, please, because when the question of a procurement regulator was raised, a lot of folks were in ignorance to it. Explain to us exactly your best understanding of what his role is going to be here and what we can expect of him, because that is going to be important in understanding how he is selected. Right. I know he will be appointed by the president. Is he also to be selected by the president?
Well, they have we go back to the whole concept of recommended by the prime minister and in consultation with the leader of the opposition and going to the president.
He can ignore them if he does not. I mean, they can defer, but he can go ahead anyway and appoint.
Yeah, right. And my colleague Margaret Rose, she had an interesting concept that we need to move away from these areas of selection and probably move to how the US do it. You have a Senate committee and you grill the individual. I think one of the fears of the current government is that this person is too powerful. Right, he has the ability to come in. He or she, has the ability to come in and stop a process based on a feeling. So the act is clear. If someone feels that they've been aggrieved, if one feels that there is a breach in a process, they could go and tell. And then comes in this big brother. Okay, my thing about it is that if you choose someone who is politically influenced, you're going to have these issues. If you choose someone who has the integrity and understands the systems and processes, then there's no fear. Because first and foremost, we're looking for transparency. What will make a contractor come and say, I believe the process has been tainted? It's because he has not been communicated, has not been kept in the loophole, doesn't understand what was the criteria, or he was told what the criteria for selection, and then somewhere in the process, someone changes it, and someone who he knows, because these contractors will be talking while they're drinking, saying, I get the work. And then somebody will say, well, how you get the work and the tender boxings have opened yet? And then now we have an issue. So if we have all of these, if you communicate the process, and we are clear and we are transparent, then you don't have these challenges. You don't have the regulator coming in to question a process because it is clear.
So this fear of this regulator being all powerful, you believe will work against us actually seeing one appointed or having the proposed authority?
I think it will work against us, and I think if there's any attempt to reduce the powers. I mean, we are in a stage right now where we're in crisis. We need somebody, and I always call them the messiah of procurement, to come to. We are in crisis. Now, the thing about is this. I think the government can speak to the stakeholders and create a system in place where, probably have a sunset clause or a review, and where we could adjust. But we need someone to come in now and radically change the system of procurement. Now, I've always joked about it, but I think this person's entourage, security detail, is going to be larger than the Prime Minister, because he is actually coming in to say, listen, the eating stop. Right? We are no longer going down this way with these projects that makes no sense, and we're going to find a system in place that we are fair, accountable, and transparent. And that is not going to resound well. I mean, we're talking procurement reform, and we're not talking party financing reform, right, which has to go hand in hand, because the reason you have these contracts going outside there is tied directly to the whole financing. Yes. We are talking procurement reform, and we're not talking budget allocation. The system of financing we have in Trinidad and Tobago, every year, when you come to September, there's mad spending, because why? If we have enough money and or something remaining and it goes back, Ministry of Finance will say, you're going to get the amount next year.
Putting it into perfect perspective for us is my guest, Vaughn Rondon. He's a leading professional within the field of procurement and supply chain management. In case you just tuned in to us, he's also currently with a state enterprise. He is a specialist, wealth experience establishing procurement systems and procedures. He is forte, of course, is public sector procurement. That's why we're so fortunate to have him this morning. So we are talking about the whole question of what goes first, the chicken or the egg. Right, and we're into this all-powerful person, you say, who is going to, and I understand, going to require a lot of security, because he will be carrying. But let's go into that area of, which is apart from this act right now, but it's a very germane point you make. You must have campaign reform. Because unless you have campaign finance reform, you're going to have the big contributors who are in one way or the other, as you said, going to have the project designed in such a way that they are the only ones that qualify for the bid. Now, if that is done, let us just say that it's going to take a long time, because in the United States and all over the world, they're still fighting with campaign financing reform. Let us just say we get a procurement regulator. Will he, from the act that is passed, have the ability to walk in, regardless of who contributed to who, look at a project and say, this is to be stopped? What is it they call it? Executive necessity? I see something wrong with this, and I think I want to put a stop to this. He would have the power to do that.
He will have the power to do that. Yeah.
Now he is, he is going to be wielding a
big sword, and he's going to piss off a number of people. The thing about it is this: I think we have a great opportunity, because we keep mulling around with this act in its various incarnations. Part proclamation, no proclamation, amendments. And we're missing a great opportunity for efficiencies and a reduction of wastage. The thing about it is, corruption to me is like an addiction, and there are many ways in which we could solve it or cure it. I think if you come tomorrow and say corruption has to stop, you're going to see a number of bodies drop in the road, because it's an addict, and you're no longer giving him his supply. We need to focus on the wastage. To me, wastage is 10 times more than corruption. We need to have projects. And what you're eventually going to do, once you focus on the wastage and you improve the efficiencies and you put the systems in place, you're going to now have luminous arrangements that are going to highlight. So anytime there is an executive directive to change from the status quo, which is follow this particular process, that becomes a red flag. The public is going to be aware. So why are we now looking to this particular vendor where the process is clear that we go out openly? So you put the systems in place. Now we have enough infrastructure right now, enough special purpose companies right now, that we could form some semblance of order from a category management standpoint. Vehicles is a big issue. We always see a tender going out in the papers for a particular vehicle. But we just have so much vehicle manufacturers in Trinidad and Tobago. Why aren't we now using VEMCOT, which is the Vehicle Maintenance Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, to sit down and say, listen, for the government of Trinidad and Tobago, a van is going to be this, a car is going to be that, a truck is going to be the other. From the economies of scale standpoint, if we buy 100 trucks, we get X amount of discount. And now you have every entity now buying what we consider to be a government vehicle for a period of time, where we now go back and reassess. And as opposed to government entities buying Porsche and Land Cruisers because of they have the ability to go out to tender, right? So we already have systems in place that we can work on to establish some category management and achieve the efficiency and reduction in wastage. That will now tie into reduction in the whole corruption.
I want to say right back to the procurement regulator, because he's going to be powerful, but he's only going to be one person. A public procurement commission is what needs to be set up, and of that he will head. The question is, how are these members to be appointed? I know they're going to be appointed by the president and answerable to the parliament, but how you go about selecting this?
Right. So I think
that is going to be the question. How
if we look at the current integrity commission and some of the issues that they have been having, we're going to find some problems. I think even my major problem as a procurement professional with 15 years experience has been, one, the head of this institution, as per the Act, required is either a lawyer, an economist, or an accountant. And for me, it starts off bad there because, we have, for 50 odd years, we have been going down the finance road and we have had no success, right? What we need is a procurement professional, someone who has been trained in procurement, someone who has a proven track record, to implement systems and processes that work. Because from a procurement standpoint, any professional will tell you, procurement-wise, category management. Once we implement category management, we can receive 10 to 30% savings. Think of 10 to 30% savings on $63 billion. What will you pay for that? You understand? And only a procurement professional can come in there and implement a procurement strategy that makes sense.
And to get someone with that qualification and that cash is in worry, you must pay some money for them. So you run into a question of their compensation, isn't it?
Well, you will run in, and I think there has been some sort of alluding that they're going to peg it in line with the Caribbean Airlines manager, GM, who just resigned. So, the thing about it, yes, you have to pay. Now, this is just one person, and you talked about the commission, and even the composition of the commission.
Yes.
They have accountants, they have lawyers, they have engineers, they have someone who has X amount of years in a related or similar procurement expertise. We are talking procurement here, people, and yet you're bringing someone who, if I worked in a procurement office or I sat close to a procurement office, I can now be on this board in charge of the public purse. We're talking procurement, and I go back to the whole classroom settings where if you're doing a tender for, you have some sort of aneurysm in your brain, you're not going to say, I want a doctor, and being a neurosurgeon is an asset. You're not going to want to have a gynecologist interfere with your head. What you want is someone who is expert, someone who is trained in that particular profession. And what I represent, the Caribbean Association of Procurement Professionals, the unique selling point we have is that we try to spread the gospel of procurement within the organization. So in our membership, we have the accountants, we have the lawyers, we have the CEOs, but there are also specialized associations like Supply Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, where they have, specialists in procurement. You think about it, it's far too long, the procurement professional, we have been out in the wilderness asking for the opportunity.
I understand exactly what you're saying because I did lead you into the question of the members that will make up this, who will be led by the procurement regulator. But maybe I should also ask you to outline the accountability framework of this commission for me.
Right. Well, this commission will be accountable to Parliament, and the regulator actually reports into the commission. How it's going to be structured, there is call for some level of independence. So the commission will be there to push the strategy of the regulator to approve the whatever handbooks and the general policy of the regulatory office. So the regulator is actually accountable to the commission and the board. The thing about it is, the composition needs to be looked at to see really and truly whether we can have that level of accountability from a procurement standpoint.
And one of the reasons I went back there is because I'm thinking, we get this procurement regulator, we get this body. Let us assume that things are kind of equal and they're in fact moving forward. But there are a number of projects that are in question now.
Right.
And I wanted to get directly to, is there a way that this regulator will he be empowered? Does the Act empower him to look back at projects already on the way?
Oh, that's a ticklish question, and I think from a legal standpoint,
because I'm trying to understand whether in fact we have lost the money. No matter what, we have already lost the money, or whether in fact talking about putting up a commission now does not have a limit as to how far back they can go to correct something that's that's actually in progress now.
Well, I'm thinking you can address some concerns based on when there's full proclamation. They should be able to say, is this going forward? Is it retroactive?
Second time you have said full proclamation. Explain.
Yeah. Well, the Act is partly proclaimed now, and it was designed that way to have a seamless transition. So some parts, some sections are proclaimed, some are not. So is upon full proclamation, they will be able to, say, and even with the regulations that have to be created, when it will start. I think it is disingenuous for us to look to an act to try to lock up people. If you understand. The concept should have been, we follow proper processes and procedures, and this would not have happened, right? What we need to do now is, we can follow the money trail, and probably under FIU, and arrest people if that is the case. But when you look back at it, no one is going to be charged, or no minister is going to be charged because they have not signed off on any documentation. And inherent in that, the minister is going to say, get it done. And in that instruction is by due process. So what's going to happen now is the public official is the one who's going to be held accountable. Now they're going to come and they're going to say, well, the minister told me or the PS told me, but at the end of the day, it's not documented. So we're going to have an act in place trying to catch some people, and the documents are not there. What we need to look at now is saying, okay, all right, notice that the money is lost, but let's find another way or another mechanism in which we can hold people accountable for what they have done in the past.
Okay, let another body, I see, find a way that we can hold them for what they've done,
in the past.
Which raises the question, penalties linked to tracing of assets by the state to reclaim public money in the event that there is a breach of the Act is one thing, but can, in this way, this creative way we have to find, we can do a sort of RICO kind of thing. We can do a income wealth reconciliation situation and look at your family and see what they have in case it's not under your name, and in fact we can reclaim money. Does the Act
no, the Act doesn't talk about getting into
we're just talking about the procurement and where we're moving forward, how the money, how it is.
Now you think about what it is. What I want to say is that no one gets up in the morning and decides to be corrupted, and no one gets up in the morning and just decides to take a lump sum of money. It's over a period of time. And these will be learned people who have looked at the cases, so they will find ways in which they can hide the money. So we are trying now to create a process and a system to catch people who have designed the very processes. So they know the loopholes, they know how to hide the money, they know where to go. So I think while we are trying to get this act in place to say, okay, we want to hold people accountable, we're missing a great opportunity to really and truly start from now to say, you know what, that was then, we will find a way to solve it, but come Monday morning, we are going to put systems in place that are going to hold our members of parliament, our ministers, accountable now under this regime.
My guest is Vaughn Rondon, many years a leading professional in the area of procurement and supply chain management. That's what we're talking about this morning, and we're talking about the Act of 2015 that's partly proclaimed to be fully proclaimed. Is that correct? That deals with the whole question of procurement. You did identify that campaign reform is something we have to do, but we said that is something outside of the mandate of this right now. What we're talking about is where we are here. If you had to get the John public to fully understand the three primary advantages of this Act, How would you identify them?
Well, I would say we now have a formal structure and a modern structure to deal with public spend. We have some clear definitions in the Act about roles and responsibilities of individuals and clear fines. We will now have an individual or a body that you can now go to and report any claims of abuse. So it is clear now, once this is proclaimed and once you have the regulator in place, it is clear now that you now have a body that is going to hold any administration accountable for abuses of public spend. Yeah.
Let's go to that area of reporting, because I know there is a penalty for one making a report and it not being a valid one, it being malicious.
Right.
Or, there are some penalties involved in that. Before you state that, are you disposed to take in some calls this morning from our listeners? Are you disposed to take in some calls from our listeners? Okay. Let me just open the telephone, because this area of procurement is something that there are many people who are aggrieved, many people who are affected by this and would like to get in the conversation with us. Our telephone number here at 107.7 is 628-2250. Our telephone number is 628-2250 and 628-9107. 628-2250 and 628-9107. And you can give us a call and ask your questions of Vaughn Rondon. You are in the belly of the beast right now. You're right there with State Enterprise, so you understand what you're saying. You were making a point. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we're looking at some of these fines, right? And malicious reporting. Now, I think you must have a clear process in order for us to identify what is going to be the malicious reporting structure. Yeah. So you must have it clear. Yes, there is an ability for people to abuse a process, but before it reaches to the regulatory body, it must be clear.
There is a threshold you must reach, so you cannot foolishly think you will go all the way to the body.
All the way.
There is a kind of clearing house to ensure that the validity of your
at
case.
the ministry level or at the special purpose company level, there will be some escalation processes if a vendor feels aggrieved. The only time you reach to the regulatory body is that, I believe that there is a genuine issue here, and then we have a lot of people that are collaborating within the particular entity.
All right.
Yeah, so, unless we see public servants being arrested, that's where you're going to have that level of change. We look into the ministers, and the ministers are here for 5 years or more, and they're here to sell the strategy. They will never see their John Hancock on any documentation. So let's look the public sector, and the public sector individuals comprise the average citizen. The very same people who ball in for change are the ones who are allowing things to happen. And the last caller did talk about paper trail, but it's the very same paper we hear is being shredded. And, before or after or during. And, we have this acceptance when we come in to do an investigation where we can't find a document.
It is criminal for documents to be shredded.
Yes.
And that is something that, when I heard of it, and you go like, somebody's got to answer for this.
Exactly.
Vaughn Rondon is the voice you're hearing this morning. We have our telephone lines open, 628-2250, 628-2250, and 628-9107 with your questions for him. Vaughn has achieved the coveted MCIPS qualification offered by the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply to the graduate diploma level of the programs. He's, as I said, 15 years in this and understanding where we are. One of the callers raised a question about nobody is paying a price for this. The bill that is partially enacted prescribes penalties for non-compliance with the operating principles, objectives, and guidelines. A fine of $500,000 and imprisonment of up to 7 years. Is that sufficient when you're looking at these contracts that are millions and billions of dollars?
Well, there may be a need to, I guess, who? So if you're looking to arrest the admin person, definitely 500,000. But if you're looking to arrest probably the CEO of the organization or the contractor, he could probably design that into his bid.
Yes.
So he could say, this is the fine in case I am caught. So therefore, and I'll take a nice 10-year holiday. But at the end of the day, I still have my money there. We need to look not only in the penalties from a fine standpoint, but probably from a blacklisting also. So if you are caught and you are convicted, therefore you cannot be part and parcel of any company,
or members of your family, and so on. Yes, well, yeah. It must be extended.
So we have that level of blacklisting, so that we have some real consequences, not only now but in the future. So therefore, you really should think twice before you enter into any sort of breaching of this act. At the end of the day, you will never see a minister creating a scope for a project. You'll never see a minister opening a tender box. You'll never see a minister evaluating or awarding. And the thing about it is this: I'm bringing the real life issues here. I have been given instructions to do a particular way, and I'm saying no. Mm-hmm. And I've been accused of everything because there's a breach in the process. And I'm saying if there were more public servants like me, then you would not have a lot of these issues happening, because yes, the end benefactor of the fraud or of the corruption is the minister, but it's the public servant that allows it to happen. You could raise a red flag. A minister, to think about it. What would a minister do? Call you and give you a directive and threaten you and say, well, you will lose your job.
You have just made a link there between what the Prime Minister proposed, which is the Whistleblower Act.
Right. That's interesting, yeah.
Yes, because that is what is going to be the cover for a public servant who fear victimization, loss of his job.
Right.
So now people should be more inclined, when we get that in place, to speak up as against going along for the favor of the minister.
Right. So, yes, you have the whistleblower, but additionally, we have a system in the public sector now of contract work. Mm-hmm. And contract work was supposed to be for a particular time frame in order for us to build up the human resource. Yes. Now we're using contract work now as the carrot on the stick. If you don't do as I say, your contract wouldn't be renewed. So it boils down now to, are we really hiring public servants and giving them the protection that they require to do their job? Yes, whistleblowing is going to assist. But if you come in now in the last week of your contract and somebody comes to you, you have to take a real stance to say, I would not do it because it is unethical. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So, I mean, yes, the ministers, and I'm saying there are ways in which you can catch them. Right? There are ways in which, under the FIU or the Integrity Act, we can look at the ministers. But guess what? We have 3 or 4 public servants who are allowing this thing to happen.
Mm-hmm. It is 15 minutes away from 12 o'clock. We're talking about the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act 2, 2015. We are talking about procurement legislation. Part of the penalty for those who breach the new act will be the penalties indicate the Indictable Offences Bill, ensuring that the proceeds of Criminal Act 2000 are in fact part of this. And this may be used by the state for tracing the assets to reclaim money in the event that there is a breach of the act. You feel good about that?
Yes, definitely.
So basically we are saying is that this new procurement regulator and his commission are going to start from this point and move forward.
Move forward, yeah.
Because to go back would not only use up a lot of their time, but it is going to be a very difficult thing, a very difficult thing to prove. You share the view of one of our callers that these people are in fact never going to have bracelets on. From what you're seeing, I'm not even dealing with the new act now.
Right.
You are into procurement. That is your area. From what you have heard, from what you have seen, and maybe from what you know.
Right.
Do you see the possibility with what we're hearing, this so-called...
Who is it you want to be arrested? Let's say, so from the top come down, I'm thinking it's very difficult to documentation-wise prove from the top come down. And I will always give the example. If you look at your live sport program, right? No one to date has said the live sport program was a poor program from inception.
Yes.
Yeah, what we're saying, there was a mismanagement of the funds inside there, or there was some questionable transactions. Yeah, but does that mean that the minister was aware, or that the minister at the time, allowed it to happen? What we're going to look at from a transaction standpoint, you're going to see, well, there weren't sufficient gatekeepers in place, so therefore, slap on the wrist, we're going to hold people accountable because they didn't file their taxes, or, they had 2 or 3 contracts when they shouldn't have it. But from a process standpoint, the minister can be held accountable because he went to Parliament and he got this program approved. It's now up to us, the technocrats, now to say, okay, let's put systems and processes in place to ensure that we have the accountability.
Telephone number is 628-2250, 628-2250, and 628-9107. Let me do that slowly. 628-2250 and 628-9107. For our guests, we're talking about procurement. You know, when I heard about the hundreds of bags from the ground to the ceiling, as the Attorney General Arawi said, I said, you know, that's one thing, but we are in an electronic age. These things should be there. It raises the question, the establishment of a comprehensive database of information on public procurement and tenders received, the award and the value of these contracts and other information, that should be posted. And it is my money. I'm a taxpayer.
Yeah.
That should be posted where folks can look at it. Is there something wrong with that?
No.
I mean, I remember just before you answered that, because one of the ridiculous things that came up was with SIS, and somebody made the statement that this is a private a matter between privacy of contract. I'm going like, it's my money. Yeah. It's a state enterprise. We should have access to all of this, and if all of this we have access to electronically, you can shred whatever you want.
It's there. Yeah.
So speak to me as to what you see in this act. The act says that they're going to have the establishment.
Right. So basically, the act is there. We create this database of not only contracts that have been awarded, but of contracts or projects that we have scheduled to be put in our place. So it is public information. So there are not going to be any surprise projects from the get-go. We understand these are the 10 projects under this particular ministry for the year, and we are going to go out to tender. This is whether selective, open, sole, and this is the person. Interesting in the act, they actually talk about a period of time where before you have to wait.
Yes.
Before you award the contract to give the public or to give the other contractors the ability to say, listen, before you award, I think you all didn't consider the following.
It is really important because real time is important. Yeah. You can have whatever you want. If you already started the contract, it's going to be hurdlesome for me to get you to stop that and deal with that. Exactly. Let's go to the telephone quickly. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Your name, where you're calling from?
Barataria.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Your question for Vernon.
Yes,
for Vaughn,
I'm wondering if it's still possible to, like, for example, hold the ministers accountable in cases where, like, for example, errant public servants are caught, and given the kinds of provisions in the act for the penalties, is it possible that some kind of plea bargaining can take place so that these errant public officers can call names, name names, and, you know, something that would lead back to the ministers and have them held accountable then?
Well, I think it is possible to become a state witness and tell. I mean, any good lawyer on the minister's side is going to ask you for the documentation. Or, you know, we are in an age now where we see cell phone recordings have become, you know, the trump card. But at the end of the day, I'm putting the burden on the public servant that if you believe that, you know, this is in a breach, you have a right at that point in time to say, why are you waiting until you are caught now to come now and say, let's enter into a plea bargain arrangement? You are part and parcel of the problem. So when it comes to you, you know, and part of the act here, you know, you raise the red flag. It's managing upwards. It's keeping those accountable. Now, I've yet to see, you know, the real, you know, from a ministerial standpoint, the real ability for a minister to influence a particular process. All he will do is call and threaten and say and promise. He will not document. He will not move you. That's it. And yet we have public servants from the very sound of a minister's voice jumping. You know, so, I mean, yes, there's their ability to do the plea bargain and turn state witness and tell. But any lawyer would they wait and sort is going to ask you, well, all right, the minister never said breach process.
So you were saying, for those who say you're putting too much burden on the public servant, you're saying, in fact, if there is sufficient penalty to go against the public servant, he will say, I'm sticking within the guidelines regardless of what you say.
It will be a deterrent for him.
It will be a major deterrent for him. This is going to be a difficult situation, staying with our contracts for a minute with the bidding process. The bidding process should also in real time be available online to the public, should it not be?
Right. Now,
in real time. I mean, this is not a secret, is it?
Right. Well, I mean, to protect the integrity of the process, because remember, we do tendering and there's an integrity behind it because there are stages. So it's only when we reach a particular time frame we open the bids. It's only when, if it's a 2-envelope system, we look after the technical and then we go to the finance. So the real time must be after we have gone through these stages to protect the integrity of the process.
Okay.
But we go back to now, why do we tender? And I mean, we have a good example of the wastewater treatment plant. We have all of this conflict behind a company being selected. But guess what? If we're doing a wastewater treatment plant of that scale, a simple Google search will tell us who are the wastewater treatment plant companies in the world. There's no way we do a public tender to have a construction company now come with subcontractors for wastewater treatment plant. So why are we are doing a tender process just for the sake of doing a tender, but we're not adding any value? Because I will say to you, then we need to go to the wastewater treatment plant individuals. We need to have a discussion, and we could actually come up with a short list, because there may be 6 or 7 of them that say, you know what, we're not doing work in Trinidad and Tobago, but the guy from South America, he willing to do it. And we now have a transparent process in which we went to. We don't have the issues of anybody with a tuck shop who has extra money coming and submitting a bid. So we have this cry. We want the tender process to be transparent. But before we reach the tender, if I want to buy an Apple phone or a MacBook Pro, I have to go to the distributors.
Vaughn, let me get back to the telephone. Good morning. Who's this, please?
Good morning. I have one question.
Yes, please.
We talk about the scope of work and who developed the scope of work for most of these projects. But we also need to look at how we're developing the small business sector.
Right.
And sometimes a lot of the scope of work will be for the major companies who then, as you just said, subcontracts to the smaller suppliers in terms of understanding really what needs to be done. Because sometimes a smaller company can do the work much more efficiently than the larger companies who then just make money and subcontract. And how would the procurement legislation really grow the SME sector in terms of putting the policies in place to enable persons to qualify for jobs that would have a sufficient scope of work that some of the smaller companies can manage?
Very, very good question, caller Vaughn. The Act, in fact, does make provision for that. Please detail.
It does make provision for local content and from the sustainability standpoint. So it's interesting because I think every day that you go down by the legal affairs building, you will find that there are a number of people who register contracting companies. What we really need to have is a mechanism in place where we can actually identify the capabilities of these companies and put a system in place where we can go to them. Even if we design the scope and we say out of that scope 10 or 15% of the value goes to small, medium enterprises, it can work. And under the guidance of it, because there's always the argument, how can a small, medium person get large if you're not giving them work? Yeah, but at the same time, we want to have a mechanism in place, because guess what? Those small, medium contractors are going to become the same friends and family of the individuals if you don't have a framework in place. And then performance measurement is important. After this small or medium-sized company has done the good work, because the caller did talk, they can do the good work. Where is it documented that this contractor has performed?
That's right.
We don't have that. We don't have that system.
So unless you have the mechanism, the big company takes the credit for it. We got the job done regardless of who actually did the work, and the small man will never grow. I want to go back to something in the little window we have remaining here. I do want to go back to the question of the act itself is voluminous. You've got to spend the time and go through this piece by piece. How do we go about educating public servants as to what is involved in this act?
Well, interestingly, through the CPI, we have started some training. Caribbean Procurement Institute. Sorry, we have done some part of our conference. We had 2 conferences last month on the whole act and getting the procuring entity prepared. And through our membership, we're actually reaching out to some of the members in the various state enterprises, for us to come in and give a nice overview. Now, the thing about it is that a lot of people have been asking this whole what has been proclaimed, what has not been proclaimed, and if it's not proclaimed, why must I know? The thing about it is whether the act goes forward as it is or it changes, we are trying to have the procurement culture change from the ground up. Because we recognize that if we leave it up to the powers that be, we're not going to see procurement regulation, anytime soon or in the kind of incarnation we want.
Well, the status quo is working for those with a vested interest. Why
exactly.
They change it? Yes.
So what we want to do now, we want to empower you. Because I've been saying at home, the public servant is the person who has to stand up and say, this is wrong. Now, where the act might give you some level of protection, and, we still have to be saying one voice. And if we're able to spread now and say, listen, as a public servant, these are some of the requirements you have on the partial proclamation, and this is what if it's fully proclaimed, this is the person that you go to. We are giving that training. So we have now from the ground up. And you're going to have, whether or not you feel it's going to happen, you're going to have somebody, Mr. X or Mr. Y, call and give an instruction. What are you going to do from today?
I'm going to take the final call we have on this, final call we have this morning. Go ahead, please, your name and your question for Mr. Rondon.
One more comment. I just called about the SMEs.
Yes.
What happens is that when the larger companies, in the scope of work and the RFQs that are normally sent out,
right,
something has to be tied in. There must be interministerial collaboration, because when you ask for a small provider to have your NIS certificate and your VAT certificate and a company as opposed to a consultant, these are the things that must also tie into the procurement procedure,
right,
in terms of managing your RFQs to have the SMEs qualify or encourage partnerships with other organizations in terms of selection process. So if you can comment as to how the Act will enable that in terms of having the other ministries that ensure that has to be added in. How would the smaller companies qualify, whether in partnerships, and how that works within the Act?
Thank you so much.
Right, so part of the Act, the regulations to come out from the regulatory body is going to set that framework or that policy across all the ministries as to how we will engage with the small, medium enterprises, and whether it is at your RFQ stage or whether it is at, you insist that when you select a contractor, he must give and report on. So the regulations to come out will actually indicate that step-by-step process for how it is done.
Well, let a lot of our listeners know that the conversations we had with both Dr. Farrell and with my guest, Mr. Rondon, is going to be posted on our website by Monday evening, and you can go up and get a lot of this thing, and you can station the CPI. Folks may want to go to their website, help them do that.
So it's the Caribbean Procurement Institute.com, and go on the website. I always say tell a neighbor, tell a friend about Breeze, but about the procurement. We have a lot of professionals within our country that are capable of spreading this word on procurement. So CPI, you look at the website, we have a lot of ways in which you can actually join and post your comments and concerns. Let us start to change this whole culture from the ground up.
Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Properties Act 2015, partial law to become full very soon, we hope. We're going to need folks like yourself to make this clear, because I feel at the end of the day, it is all good what you have said, and I concur with it, that it must start at the lowest level, and everybody must understand if somebody's asking you to break the law, well, you've got to find some ways out. You just have to get the courage to say no. And if you have Whistleblowing Act, if you have ways to protect yourself, which I'm happy about, they having the Whistleblowers Act, that folks can come out and say stuff. But, he cannot fire you. The minister cannot fire you. You may do a couple of things to get in the way of your progress, but then again, you can find victimization. It's a holistic thing. We've got to find the avenues where folks can, in fact, take their grievances if they feel that they are being retaliated against because they saw a process and spoke out against it. But we're going to need an education of public servants to understand that our business operated is not operating anymore, and you have the law with you on that. Because they are, as you said, no one's going to wake up this morning and decide, I'm going to become corrupt. It is something they have seen seen happen. They have seen how people get through in life. Mm-hmm. And it also raises the question about promotion of people. It's a holistic thing. You say, well, don't rush me. Rush me. Whatever. And let me thank you so much. You have been really a joy. Thank you for the clarity being here with us this morning. My guest has been Vaughn Rondon, leading professional within the field of procurement and supply. He's currently doing as much as he can to inform other people. Folks who want to find out more about you, are you publicly available?
Yeah, well, on through Caribbean Procurement Institute. I was on LinkedIn, Vaughn Rondon. So just pop a email. We can have the discussion started offline, and just really trying to spread that whole word on what is possible in the current incarnation and what can we do to move forward.
With all you have said and the framework you see from the Act, you believe that we will get there. You feel that there's the political will coming out of the present government to bring this to fruition?
Yes, and basically, from the Prime Minister's speech, I have also, heard the call for voluntarism. Yes. And, I've been trying to do it in my own way, with my experiences and skills in public sector procurement and some of the training that we will offer. I think there is that drive, because if you look back at it historically, every government, has fallen because of improper procurement practices. Mm-hmm. And I think if this current government doesn't pay particular attention to it, then the writing is already on the wall, because, all these scandals have been procurement related. Mm-hmm. So definitely procurement needs to be on the front burner. And I'm guessing as the budget has been read and they get into now trying to appoint these boards, we're going to see some semblance of that. I know at my ministry, the minister has looked at putting that whole procurement on the front burner and has had the discussions. So
a valuable asset, and thank you so much for the clarity for being with us this morning, Vaughn Rondon. You have yourself a wonderful day and have yourself a good week.